Thanks for joining. Today we're going to be talking about the next step in the process of constructing measures, and that is this idea of a measurement model. And a measurement model is most generally a way of connecting items with our constructs. How do we connect them? It's a relatively straightforward idea, but there's a lot of different ways we can conceptualize how observed scores, as we talked about with the outcome space, how that connects with the construct we're trying to assess. And that's the main purpose and utility of a measurement model, is to provide a framework and to provide some clarity and boundaries for what inferences we can make and which are not based on our theory. So, like in one of the most general senses, we can think of item 1, item 2, and item 3 in just a relatively straightforward assessment where we only have 3 items, we get 3 scores, and they're related to our construct. I'll go over more about these types of diagrams later, but well, what is the connection between our items and our construct? Well, one way we can think about it is our construct implies differences in the items. This is what is called a reflective model, where the individual item responses reflect differences in the items. So differences on our construct are differences on the items. So this can be very powerful. Another way is if the constructs and the lines are different. Instead of going from the construct to the items, we might have it from the items to the construct. Let's just draw that out real quick, where we have item 1, item 2, item 3. All of these items are then related to levels of our construct formatively, or coalesce or combine to create scores on our construct. This is called a formative model. And these are just different representations and ways of interpreting the relationship between items and construct scores. But we can even think more broadly. There's this idea of something called a true score theory, which is a terrible naming, I must say, for a psychometric way of conceptualizing scores, because the true score theory really emphasizes this relationship between our observed score is our true score plus error, which is why it's typically called a measurement error model, where we're focusing on what is the form of the error. The thing that I really don't like about the true score aspect is the fact that most of these assessments don't have like a true reality, so a score doesn't really make sense, but we just give a score, and we'll talk about that. This types of theories later. But in general, there's just different ways of conceptualizing what are the differences in our observed scores based on error. And there are all these other specific, what are called formal measurement models. This is something we'll talk a lot about later when we get into the specifics of assessing which types of models to fit. We have what are called a factor model. We have item response theory, generalize ability theory, if I can write fast enough. And these are some of the different, and latent class analysis. Don't want to forget that one. And these are just formal measurement models for thinking about how does a unobserved score in differences on our construct get reflected onto our different items. And a lot of these we can think about them as not only just formal models, but statistical as well. And so capturing the ideas of uncertainty and variability are really emphasized with informal measurement modeling. But there's also what are informal modeling models. And so some of the really straightforward informal models we can give is just doing what is called a time series map, or just subgroup analysis. And a really part of the informal models emphasizes displays of data. And I'll get into more of these on a later video, but the idea in the informal measurement models is that we're emphasizing how we can convey information to people that aren't experts in statistics or research in general. Sure, in education, these are the types of approaches commonly used when conveying information to parents and some types of teachers. But in general, all of these different types of measurement models have the purpose of how do we make an inference? How to make inferences about our constructs. So that's really what all of these different types of measurement models aim to do, provide some type of framework for making inferences, typically about our construct and about differences on our construct for people. So we can think about this really broadly of this kind of dynamic of our construct is we believe that we are measuring something, and we are measuring differences in something. And that something is what is causing, maybe not perfectly, maybe we don't know the exact mechanism, but they're causing differences in item responses. This is meant, or at least theorized, to be a causal relationship. And then what we, as measurement theorists and developers, we then use those item responses as a way of thinking about our outcome space. And our outcome space, basically, what are the individual types of responses that we can get? We utilize that using a measurement model. And you can probably see where this is going. Then we use our measurement model to make an inference about our construct. And so that there is this kind of circularity in what we're doing of using our hypothetical and potentially unknowable relationship between constructs and our items, using our best judgment and our best due diligence to understand the relationship between items and item responses through sometimes formal construct mapping, giving qualitative analyses, interviews, cognitive labs, and then we use measurement models, sometimes formal, sometimes informal, to use the items from our study and from our assessment to inform about our construct. And that's really the major goal I want to emphasize today, is that we develop measurement models, sometimes very complex ones, to help us utilize item responses in a strong way. And so we can think about how we can utilize this conceptualization to form inferences about people and about differences on the constructs we care about.